Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 up front for 3 months plus taxes and fees. Promo rate for new customers for limited time. Unlimited more than 40 gigabytes per month. Slows full terms at mintmobile.com.
Welcome to the Flash Finds Podcast, the world's fastest podcast where we explore how Facebook can help you with the stuff you're into. I'm Emma Rogue, joined by Nathan the Cat Lady, a Facebook creator. So Nathan, if you're into pets, what kind of stuff can you find on Facebook?
Well, I make reels about useful tips for pet owners. For instance, cats don't like still water, so all of my cats have cat fountains.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. What a great episode. See you next time on the Flash Finds Podcast, all about discovering the stuff on Facebook you care about. Bye.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode, and I'm really delighted to introduce Daryl. He is the author of When I Stopped Fighting. He's got a fantastic story. We're talking about entrepreneur success, role of faith, spiritual growth, lessons from his book, as well as his story, and I'm really happy to have him on the show. So, Daryl, welcome.
Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate you having me. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Like I said, I read your book. I really enjoyed it, and we'll talk about it later. But set the stage. Talk about how you got started, and we'll go from there.
Sure. Well, I'll start with the early stuff in terms of, I guess, what brought me to wanting to perform at a different level than I was performing previously, and achieve some success and that sort of thing. So I started off in the Midwest, actually in Michigan as a kid, and my dad worked at General Motors. He was a mechanic, and my mom took care of us in terms of the household. And that was, it was a pretty typical Midwestern family setup, I guess, at that time. And most everyone's dad, honestly, worked at either GM, Ford, or Chrysler. That just seemed to be how it went. And in the Midwest at that time, but particularly in Michigan, around the Detroit area. So that was how I was, brought up. I was brought up with Protestant work ethic. I was brought up with discipline. I was brought up with my mom kind of promoted the manners and doing things right, and trying real hard and achieving things. And that's how I was brought up. And it was interesting. I think there was a lot expected of us as kids, and I don't know that I ever felt like I lived up to what I was supposed to live up to. We're handed that box of stuff when we're young, like, hey, here's what you're supposed to believe. Here's what you're allowed to believe. Here's what you're supposed to go through life doing. And it's funny, my mom, when I was young, thought, oh, well, Daryl's either going to be a doctor or a pastor. And neither of those came to pass. But anyway, so I got involved in drinking and drugs at around 13 years old. And it was one of those things where it struck me as something that I wanted to continue doing. I didn't like, the trouble that I got in, that sort of thing, but I did like the fact that it helped me feel differently. So I got involved in drugs and alcohol at a fairly young age, and without belaboring it too long, I did some dumb things, and I did a lot of drinking, and I did a lot of drugs. And by the time I was 19 years old, I was in a drug and alcohol treatment program. So that was, for me, that was sort of, I characterize that as the second stage of my life, in terms of the growing up part. And then this was a way for me to start to live differently. And that's really what I wanted to do, because prior to going into treatment, I took responsibility for nothing. I lied, I cheated, I stole, I did some bad stuff. And I wouldn't say that I was a bad person, but I was definitely I was on the wrong track. And I was headed down pretty fast. So So I went into treatment, and what I found out was there was a different way to live. There was a different way to conduct myself. There was a different way to conduct my life. And part of that included, well, it all included me growing as a human being, me growing spiritually, me growing emotionally, and doing my best to do the right things and to not do the wrong things, to keep away from doing things that didn't resonate with what was best for me or for others or for, my life. So
Mm.
that was what started me on the path. We could go any direction from here, but that was what got me going. So from that point, it's been a whole lot of other adventures and misadventures and successes and failures and all kinds of great stuff. But it's all led me to, being at a point in my life where I really, really enjoy my life, and I get up every day, and I don't have to worry about, where the next meal's coming from. I don't have to worry about a mortgage payment. A lot of things I don't have to worry about because I put the time and effort in when I was younger. It helped me have a different life.
Yeah, it's a great way to lay the groundwork. And so, we'll get into the, you know, specifics. And one thing I really have a question about is a lot of people, they go into, alcohol or drug addiction, and as a way to mask some sort of emotional trauma. And so for you, was it a way to run away? Was it a way to hide? What was this abuse and addiction uh, for? Was it to feel better? Talk about kind of if you don't mind, the emotional trauma or the motivations
Sure.
behind this.
It's interesting because I've asked myself that question hundreds of times over the last many, many years, and I've been sober for a long time. But there's nothing that I can point to that says, here was an event, here was an emotional trauma, here was, there's certainly things that happen to everybody over the course of their lives that but no sort of huge traumas or anything. I feel like, as I've looked at this over the course of time, it really is, I didn't feel like I lived up to what I thought others wanted me to be. And it moved me in the opposite direction. It took me in a direction that was going to prove the point that, I wasn't what others wanted me to be, and I was going to be the exact opposite. So I think that was it. I felt like, and I don't hold blame. I don't think about, oh, my parents either did this or failed to do this, or, et cetera, et cetera. I truly believe that my parents, and probably most parents, do the best they can with the information they have at any given moment, which includes their own upbringing. So, I think it's a slippery slope if I were to look at my life and say, oh, I'm this way because of this. I'd say anytime when we're younger, sometimes we can do that, but as we get older, we have to take responsibility. So I guess to answer the question, Christopher, I would say it was me not living up to what I thought were the expectations of me. And then as I continued to not live up to those, and I continued to go down that slippery slope, it just exacerbated itself and to the point where it culminated in going to drug treatment.
Interesting. Yeah. So that was just curious. And so one thing you talk about is faith and spirituality, and how that helped you come out of this. And so how important is faith, spirituality, and how did it help you get out of the hole that you were in?
I grew up in like I said, Protestant work ethic. So I grew up Lutheran. I was handed this, Lutheran sort of, here's what you're supposed to believe. And so I had that in my younger years. And then when I got sober, I was introduced to 12 steps, which is, many people call it a spiritual program. It's in my estimation, I believe it is, but I also believe sometimes that scares people away. I look at it more as a practical guide for living. And part of that practical guide for living is believing in a power greater than myself. And when I first started on the journey, and being newly sober, I was 19 years old. So I didn't have any idea how to live. I didn't have any idea how to do anything, much less, be sober as a 19-year-old kid. I had to learn all the other stuff too. So it started for me, a spiritual sort of life started for me with being exposed to, hey, it really helps to believe in a power greater than yourself. And I thought, you know what? I'm not the one that makes the grass grow. I'm not the one that makes my eyes see. So whatever power there is that does that, it's bigger than me. And that was how I got started. And it just grew over time. Faith to me now is what I live by. And it's not necessarily faith in some definition of a God or a higher power. It's not defined. It's being able to look at my life and say, something has been guiding me, something has been helping me along when I am presented with the lessons in life and I learn from those lessons in life. And I've also known that and experienced that when I don't learn from those lessons in life, I get them again, and I get them again, and I get them again. And that's how life has sort of unfolded for me. So faith as I go along in this life is not a difficult thing for me to have, because I all I have to do is look back at what has happened and look at my experiences and look at the unseen help that I've had along the way, as long as I do my part. And I think that's crucial for me, and I truly believe this. I don't know if it's biblical or not, but faith without works is dead, and that's not, it might be a biblical, I think that maybe did come out of the Bible, but I don't believe it because of that. I believe it because in my life, it's been true. I have to put in the effort. I have to put in the work. I have to put in taking the risks. I have to do the things that are difficult that sometimes I don't want to do. And then the help comes. And that's how I've gathered faith over the course of time.
Yeah. So moving on into the book, kind of talk about this, just kind of a synopsis, and then talk about the lessons when I stopped fighting. You share a lot of personal stories and lesson, and tell us one story that stands out and to whet the audience's appetite.
Sure. So in a 12-step program, there are mentors available, and I was fortunate to be introduced to a mentor whose name was Bud, and he was a lot further along in life than I was. He was probably my age now when I was 19 at the time, and Bud was a really, he was a recovering guy. He'd probably been recovering for about 15 years at that time, but he had something that I wanted. He had a serenity, and he had a peace, and he had a sense of humor, and he had an ease. He had all the things that I didn't have in terms of his makeup and his being. And he was just a really, really solid, loving human being. And the title of the book came about when Bud, I was in the midst of wrestling with some problem, and I grew up, as I mentioned, it was a sort of upbringing where, if there's not a bone sticking out, you're not really hurt. If there's rub some dirt on it, walk it off, all those kinds of things. No pain, no gain. So that was kind of how I was raised, and that was the environment for me. So, and the more you wrestle through problems, the better it is, and you got to fight, and this and that. And I was good at all that sort of stuff. I was good at the fighting. I was good at the wrestling. I was, ready to tackle anything. And, by straining and fighting. And Bud said to me one day as I was struggling, he said, Daryl, when you stop fighting, the fighting stops. And that's why I titled the book When I Stopped Fighting, because that's what I needed to do. And my entire life from that point on, which now has been almost 40 years, has been trying to determine what is my fight, what are fights that I'm just not going to win and I don't need to wage. And that's a lot of what my book is about. It's about stopping the fighting within me. It's about, slowing down the fighting within me. It's about understanding what I can do and what I can't do, what I have, some control over and what I don't have any control over. And, a lot of times these seem intuitive, but as we look at how our lives are playing out, most of the time we're trying to control things that we have no business trying to control, which, and a little sneak peek into my book is what I call the nouns: people, places, and things. Those are the things that I cannot control. And so what that does is it brings it back to me. It brings it back to what can I do? What can I do with myself to make myself better in this world? And that's the gist of the book. There's a lot of lessons. Probably 2/3 of the story is my story, which there's funny stuff, there's sad stuff, there's emotional stuff. There's a lot of stories in there. But then the last third or so of the book is some of the lessons that I've learned and some of the things I've needed to begin to understand to have the life that I want to have.
Yeah, very, very fascinating. And so, and I really enjoyed this, and I think the audience can really have a lot of takeaways. I think there's so many pearls of wisdom. And so for people that want to check out the book and follow you on social media, check out your work, how can they do that?
Best way to find the book is on Amazon, and it's you can look under When I Stop Fighting or under my name, Daryl Dittmer, DarylDittmer. If you plug that into Amazon, it'll bring you to my book. And there is an audio book available, which I did myself, which was kind of a cool process. So those are two ways to find the book. And then if you want to find me, I have a website, and it's www.daryldittmer, DarylDittmer.
Audience, let's thank Daryl for coming on and really discussing his book and his I really enjoyed his book is on Amazon. Be sure to check it out and leave a 5-star review, follow his socials. And with that, thanks so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing such a powerful story.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I enjoyed it very much. And I love sharing the story. The intent is to help other people at this point in my life. So the extent I can do that makes me very grateful. So thank you.